Apyayantu mamangani Vākrānaścakshuः śrotramatho balamindriyāni ca sarvāni sarvam brahma upanishadam maham brahma nirakuryam mama brahma nirakarot anirakaranamastu anirakaranam me astu Tadatmani nirateya upanishatsu dharmaha te mayi santu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. What a wonderful dialogue between the father Uddalaka and the son Shvetaketu. We are presently studying the portion in chapter 6 of this great Upanishad. We are studying that portion where the Mahavakya, the great statement, TAT-TVAM-ASI, thou art that, your true nature is divine. If you realize your true nature, you can be completely free of sorrow, completely be free of all limitations which are causing misery to you at this moment. So it's about discovering one's own true nature, though to be more clear, we say as we go higher, there is nothing to be discovered but false notions, erroneous perceptions have to be dismissed. And the interesting part of the whole matter is erroneous perception of the so-called things outside and the entity that is erroneously perceiving are one whole, and when the intelligence awakens thanks to the revelation of the Upanishads, both the limited subject and the limited object vanish at one go. It is thus that the substrate, adhisthana of both drishya and drik, of both vishaya and vishayi, both what is experienced and the one who experiences, the substrate of both these remains in all splendor. When one realizes the truth is this substrate. This substrate is everything, and this substrate is I. In Brihadaranyaka, it appears as Aham Brahma Asmi. In this Chāndogya, since it comes in the form of the Guru's instruction to the Shishya, it comes in the form of Tat-TVAM-ASI. Tat-TVAM, Tat-Adhishtanam, Tat-Sarvavyapi Tat-TVAM, Tat-Anu Tat-TVAM, Sa-Anima. That subtlety, which alone is true, which is the substrate of everything. Tat-TVAM-ASI, you are that. So now, in this particular session, on this day, Friday, September 16, we are going to see the fifth occurrence, the fifth time Uddalaka brings the statement Tat-TVAM-ASI. However, it's not a parrot-like repetition. It is with yet another example or drishtanta. Drishtanta means illustration. An illustration is drishtanta, and what it illustrates is darshtantika. In the present matter, the matter on hand, darshtantika over here is the oneness of all that exists, the oneness that every one of us is in reality. Darshtantika is oneness, and drishtanta is a tiny seed of a banyan tree brings forth a huge tree. The seed is so tiny, nobody would imagine that that seed one day would be the huge banyan tree. So what's the connection between oneness and the subtle emerging as the gross? The connection is this gross world, as Adi Shankara calls it, Nama Rupatmakam Karya Bhutam Jagat. That universe, which is in fact, in essence, effect from the subtle cause, Brahman, which is Nama Rupatmakam, full of names and forms. And you and I, looking at the names and forms, get baffled. Certain names and forms attract us so much, we feel we cannot live without it. Last month in Mumbai, I met a lady who was very fond of rich things. And I forgot the brand of a certain vanity bag she was talking about. She was confessing before me that there was a time some years ago, she said she was very worldly and she wanted to buy that some French brand of a vanity bag that women carry. And she knew that it would cost 50,000, 70,000, etc. One day with a lakh of rupees in her bag, she entered the expensive bag shop in Mumbai, in some fancy area. Mumbai has too many fancy areas. I did not try to tell you any particular area. Whole Bombay is rightly called Mayanagari. Went there, and then she found, to her surprise, her astonishment, not really, she knew sort of, but wasn't ready for that shock. That particular brand, the vanity bag that women carry, price began at 50,000. And those were not impressive. She picked up one, this is the one I want to buy. And that was 3.5 lakhs of rupees just for that one vanity bag. And she wasn't ready for paying that. So with a long face, she came back home. But when she told me this last month in Mumbai, she completed the story saying, after another year, I saved enough money and I did go and buy that bag. 3.5 lakh rupees, one bag which they carry. And she said, like that, she had the face of life, was most expensive things she had acquired. But today, she admitted she has seen the hollowness of all these possessions and pleasures. That is how she regularly visits a certain guru's ashram, listens to Vedanta, does upasanas, and more or less she has given away, she was running a business too, to her daughter. You run the show. I am here to guide you when necessary. So let me not go to more details. Certain things like that vanity bag, attract us. And certain other things cause agitation in us. When we read something about some violence, some crime, some murder, some rape, or some genocide somewhere, where thousands, tens of thousands are killed in some part of the world, we get, oh, what kind of phenomenon? It was a net problem. So I guess. So certain things are repulsive and certain other things are attractive. Friends, pulled by attractive things and pushed by repulsive things, you know what happens, spiritually speaking? The separate self in us gets reinforced. When you and I ask ourselves, who am I? The answer is, I am the one who wants to buy that bag that costs 3.5 lakh rupees. Another day we sit, ask ourselves, who am I? I am the one who hates that person who murdered 3 people and is trying to kill me also. I hate him. I want police to catch him and maybe award a death sentence to him. Who am I? I am the one who likes this. I am the one who dislikes that. Vedanta comes along and says, this is all in the domain of error. There is an awakening which can be brought about if you bring some order in daily life, Shama, Dhamma, and so on, and you study the Upanishads. What's the connection to the banyan seed? The truth of our existence is not these gross things that attract us or repel us. The truth of this existence of ours, our life, truth of all that exists, is something very subtle that is hardly visible. Shankara in his commentary says wonderfully that Bahyasakta, Bahya Vishayasaktanam. That is a wonderful guidance to us for what we call sadhana. Let me try to read that line. I personally found that line very inspiring. Sri Shankaracharya makes a statement which is motivational for being more alert in daily life. He says, Sthulam Namarupadi Matharyam Jagat Sataha Utpannam, from the subtle, invisible reality, which actually is the all-pervasive substrate, this Jagat has risen. And even though Nyaya, that is certain logical thinking, Agama, Shruti, Shruti say, and then there is Nyaya about what Shruti says. There is enough logic to support what the Shastras say. Yadyapi Nyaya Agamabhyam Nirdharitah Artaha Tata Eva Iti Avagamyate. Though you and I understand, yeah, the scriptures are saying this universe is not the truth. One step further, Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam. This world of possessing a house, marrying somebody, having children, getting promoted, going places, all that. Actually, finally, Dukkhalayam Ashashvatam. It's impermanent and it actually brings sorrow. Yadyapi nirdharita harta, though everything is so well settled, well decided, now comes the punchline. Shankaracharya's prasanna gambhira bhasha is so beautiful. Tathapi, even then, atyanta sukshmeshu artheshu, bahya vishayasakta manasah sabhava pravrittasya Asatyam gurutarayam shraddhayam duravagamatvam syat. To make it simple, when our mind is bahya vishaya asakta, our mind is attached to the pleasure, the attractive things of the world, then sukshmeshu artheshu duravagamatvam. Avagama means understanding. Duravagama, very difficult to understand. Even if somebody says to us in the loudest voice, come on, realize Brahman. We say, come next week. Today, we are all going to Baskin Robbins to eat some new flavors of ice cream that have come. Bahya Vishaya Sakta Manam Saha Vayam. And Brahma Vichare, Ishvara Vichare, Adhyatma Vichare, Asmakam Asakti Na Asti. Therefore, Shankara especially comments this because the second mantra in this 12th section, in addition to Uddalaka saying to Shvetaketu that like the tiny tiny seed of the banyan tree, the truth that is conveyed by Upanishads is extremely subtle. Therefore, in addition to saying that, he says, Shraddhatsva. We'll see it in the third slide. Shraddhatsva. My dear son, my dear beloved boy, have Shraddha. Shraddhatsva. These Upanishads are so precious. Do not jump to a conclusion and imagine these rishis must have gone to some kind of confused state and they wrote this. No, 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 no. Shraddhatsva. Shraddhayam asatyam is the bhashya. When there is no Shraddha, sukshmeshu artheshu duravagavatvam, because when there is no Shraddha, then the mind wanders. It is a two-sided affair. All of us do experience this. Sometimes we may be in the satsanga of a very, very wonderful teacher, and he or she is explaining some things with so much of skill. But so especially for brahmacharis, brahmacharinis, or even grahasthas who have been attending every day, and if they have come to know certain loopholes of the ashram setting, etc., their shraddha about the guru reduces. They saw something going on in the ashram, then they find. When shraddha is less, that is when, though you are sitting and listening to the shruti, your mind goes somewhere else. Some of the students even look out through the window and go, what's going on? Oh, there's a crow sitting upon the. Nowadays, crows have increased in our ashram. Why does that happen? Adi Shankara explains in simple Sanskrit. Shraddhayam asatyam. When there is no Shraddha, the distraction of the mind is more. Shraddhayam tu satyam, he says in the commentary on the second mantra of this section. Shraddhayam satyam. When there is Shraddha. Manasaha samadhanam. Bubutsite arthyave. Tatascha tadartha avagatihi. And quotes Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where at some place in the very first chapter, fifth section, third mantra, there is a line, Anyatra manaha abhuvam. Somebody confesses, my mind went somewhere else. Exactly when the Guru was touching upon something very important, this fellow was thinking, why have crows increased? When I joined the ashram, there were not so many crows. Now, aneke kakaha tragata. Instead of Tatvamasi, he is thinking about kakaha. Kaka means crow. So Shankaracharya says, Anyatra manaha abhutam. Well, let's get down to the actual mantras now. There is a title slide. Let's take a look at the title slide, where, in a manner of saying, the crux of the matter is given. In title side, we say disappeared. TAT-TVAM-ASI for the fifth time. The emergence of the gross from the subtle, and our getting carried away by the gross, being unable to notice the subtle. The illustration is a huge banyan tree emerging from a tiny seed, and the selected words, which are from the second mantra, Etasya vai saumya eshaha animnaha evam mahanyagrodaha tishtati. Mahanyagroda. This huge Nyagroda is the banyan tree. Vatavraksha. In India, I guess they call it Varga. Mahanyagroda. Aladamara in some Tishtati in Acharya Shankara says, probably by Tishtati we could even take doing what is called, a reasonable addition of a preposition, adhyahara. Tishtati can be taken as uttishtati. A tree rises from a tiny seed. Animnaha bijat is implied. So, oh dear one, of this subtlety, which means from this subtlety, the Shashti Vibhakti sometimes gives the meaning of Panchami Vibhakti, coming from huge banyan tree in this manner, this huge banyan tree, this gross entity comes from a subtle basis, comes into being. Let's go to the second slide now, where the mantra itself, first mantra, is given. The first mantra is, the father lovingly says to the son, Negrodha phalam ataha ahara. At the end of the earlier section, namely 11th, the student had a doubt. How can this vast universe come from that subtle thing? If the cause is subtle, the effect also should be subtle. Something like that he thought. And this example dismisses that imagination. From something subtle, because something huge, gross, and vast can arise. Therefore, ataha means therefore, ahara. And we have given in green letters the reply by the student. Idam Bhagavaha. He goes, runs and brings it. Here it is. This is a Nagrodha, a banyan fruit. Bhindi, the father says, break it. Bhindi. And the son, maybe with a knife, using some tool, breaks it into two parts. Bhinnam, idam phalam, bhinnam. Bhinna, somewhere else may mean different, but bhinnam here means broken. Bhid, in Mundaka Upanishad, all of you have seen. Bhidyate hridayadvan, bhiddatu, bhid binatti. And bhinnam is the past passive participle. Here it is, broken. The father patiently says, Kimatra pashyasi, what do you see here? The son looks at the broken fruit, lot of tiny seeds. Anvyaha iva imaha dhanaha. Dhanaha is feminine, therefore Anu first becomes Anvi, like Tanu becomes Tanvi, Lagu becomes Lagvi, Guru becomes Guruvi, Uru becomes Urvi, Anu, Anvi, just an adjective put into a feminine form. Imaha dhanaha anvyaha iva. Anvyaha is the plural of anvi. Nadi nadyau nadyaha. Anvyaha iva ima dhana. The father smiles. Yes, they are so tiny, so minuscule. Asam of these Asami Shashti Bahuvachana of I think Iyam Ime Maha Asam or Asau Ime Maha. One of the pronouns, what it means is break one of these. Of these is Assam. We have a state in India, Assam. Assam is of these. So ask an Assamese person. Of these means what in your state's name? Assam Ekam Bindi. Anga. Anga is a loving way of addressing a young person. The father lovingly says, "Oh dear one, Anga. Oh Saumya, Saumya," like that. Ekam Bindi. Right away without any delay, the tiny seed also, maybe crushing it or using some tool, his disciple breaks that tiny seed again into parts. Kimatra pashyasi lakinchana bhagavaha. Bhagavaha seems to be a form of what elsewhere we have Bhagavan. Bhagavan, Bhagavanto, Bhagavantaha, that Bhagavantam, Bhagavanto, Bhagavataha, the Sambodhana is Bhagavan. But you have Bhagavaha, which is probably some other word, or it's an Arsha Prayoga for Bhagavan. Oh divine being, oh revered sir, oh my revered teacher, father, nakinchana pashyami. I'm not able to see anything in this. So in two steps, the experiment comes to its conclusion. Let's quickly read the English translation. Fetch a fruit from this banyan tree, says the father, and he brings it. It is this one, venerable sir. Break it. It's broken, venerable sir. You have to understand that. Meanwhile, he breaks it. What do you see in it? Question mark. Venerable sir, these are the grains, more atomic. Dear son, break one of them. And the son does it and says, it's broken. Bhagavaha, Bhagavan, venerable sir. What do you see here? Nothing whatsoever. Kinchana, na kinchana. Oh, venerable sir. That's good enough. So what do we understand from this? That's given in the interpretation that Uddalaka gives in the second mantra, which is our third slide. We go to the second mantra in the third slide. Chapter 6, section 12, mantra 2. Tadam hovacha Uddalaka Shvedakedum prati hovacha Yam vai somya etam animanam na nibhalayase. When you say na kinchana pashyami, na nibhalayase, here means na pashyasi. That's the meaning Acharya Shankara attaches to the word nibhalayase. Etam animanam. When it becomes very subtle, you don't see it. But there is a subtlety which is the cause for this great tree. So once more, I will not quote those Sanskrit words. The words of Shankara Bhashya saying, the more we are attached to pleasure, power, position, success, good name, fame, and all sorts of things, Bahya Vishaya Sakta Manasaha Sadhakasya Shraddha Vihinasya Cha Sukshmeshu Artheshu Avagamaha Na Bhavati. Drishti na sambhavati. Animanam na she's have seen it. Etasya vai somya eshaha animnaha evam maha nibrodaha tishtati uttishtati. This is from this which millions and millions or billions and billions of people fail to see. A few enlightened ones, a few rishis, a few seers only see. That subtlety is the source for the emergence of this entire universe. From the tiny seed arises the huge banyan tree. From this subtle, invisible Brahman Brahma is not tiny. Don't stretch the example too far. Don't stretch. Examples have to be taken just for their scope, intended scope. Don't stretch it. I must have told you the joke. A husband said to a wife one evening, looking at her, he said, "When I see your face, I think of Taj Mahal." Yesterday, I think, was Engineer's Day. His wife was an engineer. She slapped him on his face. He said, "What did I do? I praised you. I said your face is so beautiful that I think of the beautiful Taj Mahal." But being an engineer, he said Taj Mahal means it has four minars. He said, "Do I have four minars on my head? Why, how dare you compare me with the Taj Mahal?" No, not all engineers are like that. But that's an example we give. We are not here to comment on marriages or women's nature or men's nature or engineer's nature or doctor's nature. That's not our business. We are here to convey how an example has a certain scope and has a message. You got to take it for that message and not dig into the example unnecessarily. So Advaita Vedanta, for example, is criticized by some who have not studied properly, saying, "You people say this universe is an illusion, it's like a snake upon the rope, but in order to see a snake, there must be a real snake somewhere." So rope and snake is an absurd example, they call. Oh dear, you are stretching the example. You are like that wife who slapped her loving husband, who wanted to compliment her on how graceful and pleasing and nice face she has. "When I see you, I think of Taj Mahal." He said, and this lady thought of, "Oh, he is seeing four horns on my head." Likewise, the rope and snake example, the message is simply you are seeing something while actually it is something else. Full stop. Period. Don't stretch it. In order to see a snake upon the rope, there must be another real snake. That memory acts here, and therefore I see a snake. Therefore, in order that we are seeing this universe, even if you say this universe is false, there must be a real, another real universe. Come on. Don't stretch an example. If you want to go deeper, walk with the teacher. The teacher can show you how thought is such a phenomenon where what is not gets projected upon what is. Atasmin tadbuddhihi adhyasaha, says Adi Shankara. That's the pure definition. To see tat in atat. To see X in what is not X. To see Y in what is not Y. For that, to see a snake in what is not a snake, what actually is a rope, is given. Don't stretch it to which snake was it, etc. This is all going. So here too, when it is said it's subtle and the example of the tiny seed of banyan is given, don't say that Brahman must be very tiny. Rama, Brahma is beyond space. If you want to say, it is anoraniyan mahatom. It's tinier than the tiniest and more huge than the most huge one. Anoraniyan mahato mahiyan atmasya jantu bhito guhayan, etc. That Upanishad says. So the example is to convey the difficulty that extrovert people have in understanding Brahma. Yesha goes with Mahanidrodha, masculine. Yesha Mahanidrodha evam animnaha uttishtati. The huge banyan tree rises from a tiny seed. Shraddhatsva, oh my dear one, it's okay if you study scriptures, that is good. It's good that you do necessary logic, but behind them, beneath them, if you don't have Shraddha, things will slip through your fingers. Shraddhasva, Shraddham Kuru. Tava Shastreshu, Guruvakyeshu, Ishvarecha, Shraddha Bhavatu. Let there be Shraddha. After this, the third mantra or the fourth slide in our presentation of this 12th section. There are 16 sections in chapter 6, which is the fifth time TAT-TVAM-ASI appears. So 6, 12, and 3. Saya Eshaha Anima. My son, I am trying to convey to you this Anima, this Anubhava. Brahma is Anu, extremely subtle. Like if some water falls upon the table, we see it. But if air blows, we don't see it. We may say, wow, it's a pleasant breeze. Sitting here in Bangalore, I can say, well, in spite of much of the country being hot at this time in Bangalore, especially by late evening, the breeze is cool. At night, you have to pull a sheet over yourself, turn the fan on, fan off, turn the fan off. Last 3-4 nights, typically at midnight, I pull the sheet a little more to cover even my ears. It's a bit cold. So the breeze can be cool in places like Bangalore, which are 3,000 feet above sea level. So water is gross, air, which you cannot see, is subtle. Water itself is subtle, ice is gross, for it has limited space that it occupies. So that's physical things. Even in other matters, you want to explain to a child, 4-year-old child asks you one day, Uncle, tell me what is jealousy? You cannot show jealousy like you show a stone. So jealousy or sorrow, loneliness, a lot of such psychological issues are sukshma. So anu. So one is mahat, another is anu. One is big, another is small. One is heavy, guru, another is lagu, light. One is brihat, and another could be again anu or some such word. Saya eshaha anima. This subtlety. Aitadatmyam idam sarvam. The entire universe has this truth as its self. Esha atma yasya sarvasya atma asti. Etad atma shabda comes there in the sense of the inner truth. This entire universe has that Brahma, which we are talking about, as its inner truth. Tat Satyam, and this Brahma alone is true. Saha Atma, that is the truth of your existence too. Tatvamasi, Shvetaketu. Oh Shvetaketu, you are that. Because of the mental activity arising from erroneous perception, which itself is avidya, you see all this duality, injustice you see, and fairness you see somewhere. Ketu is uplifted, delighted. He says, Bhuya eva ma bhagavan. Oh revered sir, that is not Sambodhana, Bhagavan. Revered sir, may please tell me once more with a new dimension. In fact, the next section, namely 13th section, talks about salt dissolving in water. And if you see the water, you don't see salt. Only when you taste, you know. Likewise, the subtle tattva is ever present because the doubt which will connect us to next section, which we see next Friday, the doubt that Shvetaketu has is, if it is all pervasive, if it is everywhere, outside and inside, above and below, and so on, why don't we see it? So in the next section, Uddalaka shows when you dissolve some handful of salt in a jar of water, salt is everywhere. Taste it above, taste it in the middle, taste it at the bottom, taste it at the side. Everywhere there is salt. Tatapi, even then, if you look at that water in the jug, it may look like plain water without any salt. Tata Somya iti uvacha. Thus, we have covered the mantras, but let me see quickly if I had marked some portion. About the whole topic is subtle emerging as the gross, right? Adi Shankara says, Bijasya adrishyamanasya. The seed cannot be seen when you break it, the inner part. Bijasya sukshmasya adrishyamanasya stula shakha skanda phala phalashavan karyabhutaha vrikshah tishtati utpannaha santishtati. So branches, the trunk of the trees, shaka, skanda, phala, the fruits upon the tree, phalasha, the twigs or the shoots or the leaves. Right? This is a simple comment he makes upon the second mantra. He of course makes a lot of nice introductory comments. The whole bhashya is no need to say worth reading. Okay. So then there is the portion already I read that more we are attached to external things, so even it could be a very subtle desire. There was a lady in one of the ashrams who wanted to be a master of all Upanishads. I want to be an authority on Upanishads. And because she wanted to become an authority, her mind got more and more, agitated. If she found some other student knowing more mantras, she was agitated. If she found one day she knew so many mantras of Upanishads and nobody knew even half of it, she would feel on top of it. So see that ego got strengthened by even otherwise a good desire. To master all the Upanishads is a good desire. Therefore, Vahya Vishaya Asakta Manasaha Sukshmeshu Artheshu Avagatihi na bhavati. This has come in the Bhashya, which I already read. And then, why is it that we don't see this truth if it is everywhere? That is the basis for the last part, Bhuya eva vijnapayatu bhagavan. But as I already explained, connection to the next section. Shankara does say that Yadi tat sat mu jagato moolam, if it is the source of all the jagat, is implied, why don't we see it? To answer that, the next section. Om Namah Paramarashi. Namah Paramarashi.